The Resilient Washington State Initiative provides a framework for long-term implementation of seismic risk reduction policies and activities across the state with the goal of making the state resilient within a 50-year timeframe. According to FEMA, the state of Washington is ranked second highest in the nation for earthquake risk. Our state's annual loss from earthquakes is estimated to be $336 million.
Resilient Washington State was an initiative started a few years ago to really look at how the state not only will respond immediately to a disaster, but how it will recover.
Resilient Washington State has target states of recovery for the housing and economic development sector. For example, unreinforced masonry structures, which are usually historic buildings, are a common type of older construction that is especially vulnerable to seismic activity. The timeline target for response and recovery is set to be 3 months to a year. However, the actual time needed currently is 3 or more years. This is a collective opinion based on existing data and expert judgment. The work conducted by Resilient Washington by sector groups led to recommendations that identify steps aimed to improve Washington's resiliency. For example, Recommendation 3 is to improve the resilience of buildings in areas of high seismic hazard. This recommendation aims to improve the life safety and increase the number of people who will be able to shelter in place. A list of priority action under Recommendation 3 is to compile a detailed inventory of actual building stock, such as types of buildings, dates of construction, seismic retrofits, and structural systems. The recommended organization to lead and participate in this action is the Department of Commerce.
Looking at all the recommendations, the most effective recommendations I see are ones that are changing building codes, changing Growth Management Act priorities to include long-term recovery and strengthen buildings and critical infrastructure, hospitals, schools, that sort of thing.
The 8th recommendation is to identify and map sources of seismic activity and geologically hazardous areas, as well as to develop plans for mitigation of identified hazards. This can be accomplished by working with the planning and public works departments within local jurisdictions and tribes to develop a model ordinance of mitigation measures, along with an explanation of how these measures can be used.
There are lots of recommendations in there that are low cost, fairly simple, not particularly complex, and pretty tenable, mandating that schools have continuity of education plans and that they drill and practice emergency response. That's not particularly difficult. That could be easily done right now.
Resilient Washington State is important to lay the groundwork for quick recovery and proper preparation for a seismic event. By using these assessments, timelines, and recommendations, jurisdictions can focus efforts on improving life safety and post-earthquake recovery. Public support will make the implementation of seismic risk reduction policies and activities effective across the state for housing and economic sector with these plans of action. A resilient state is one that maintains services and livelihoods after an earthquake. In the event that services and livelihoods are disrupted, recovery occurs rapidly with minimal social disruptions and results in a new and better condition. In Washington, we must prepare for earthquakes. While funding for major projects is hard to come by, many actions are available that would help mitigate damage from powerful events. If public awareness is spread in a responsible manner, we may be able to step forward and lead the world in resiliency.